This is a BLTD sports update. 3 p.m. on Monday afternoon marked the National Hockey League's trade deadline, and the Buffalo Sabres found themselves making a move before the clock struck zero. The Buffalo Sabres found themselves dealing forward Jamie McGinn to the Anaheim Ducks for a conditional draft pick. Here's what Buffalo Sabres general manager Tim Murray had to say following the trade deadline regarding potential deals for other pending unrestricted free agents.
Not close and not disappointed. You need a partner to dance, and there were some inquiries, but there were, I think, to me, I felt when I got the calls that it was just tire kicking anyway, so I'm not going to get disappointed over something I have no control over.
Live from the First Niagara Center in Buffalo, New York, I am Ryan Wolfe, and this has been a BLTD Sports Update.
You're listening to Better Live Than Dead.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another BLTD Extracast. We are live here today at the WBNY studios out in Buffalo, New York. A big day, I guess you could say. Not a very exciting day, but a big day nonetheless. The National Hockey League trade deadline has come and gone, for better or for worse. Mostly for worse because, personally today, and I'm not mad about it, I spent a very long time at the arena this morning for one trade to happen. I got there at 9 o'clock. And everybody here is lit, man. There's people. I just stopped because there's like people yelling and screaming. This is great.
That's our one staffer, Nick Lippa, probably just going nuts over something about. They're talking probably like an NFL thing this off season, but it's always fun.
It makes me miss college very much. But I get there at 9. I can't afford to. Too much money. I got there at 9. Deadline's at 3. Trade doesn't come till 4 o'clock, so you can certainly tell. How excited I was today. Although, I did make the trade of the day. I'm not sure if you saw my Twitter or my Snapchat. I was trying to document my day. Trade of the day, ladies and gentlemen, was I finally dropped off my Steve Ott jersey. So in 14 to 21 days, my Steve Ott jersey will be an Evander Kane jersey. My Derek Roy jersey became a Steve Ott, becomes an Evander Kane. Hopefully the Evander Kane one can stick around for a while. But I digress. I'm Ryan Wolfe, at WolfeBLTD on Twitter. Joined, as always, or mostly on the Extracast, by Brayton at BJ Wilson WGR. Also a busy man today. We've got a radio show coming up here in just a little bit, but we had to get this talk out about the Buffalo Sabres. The move they make today, the one move they made today, Jamie McGinn heads to Anaheim. A rumored deal for the past couple of days, at least since the Sabres got on the West Coast. McGinn goes to Anaheim for a conditional third-round pick, which is a third-round pick in the 2016 draft. But if Anaheim makes the Western Conference Finals and McGinn plays 50% of the postseason games to get to the Western Conference Finals, it becomes a second-round pick in 2017. So first off, Brayton, what were your thoughts on this deal when it came across the line?
When I think at that point it was probably like 3 o'clock, everything had passed and we're all figuring out really early, more earlier than usual, like, these teams are done, and, it's just like, okay, process of elimination. Buffalo still not saying they're not done. Anaheim, Minnesota, they're not done yet. Montreal, they're not done yet. So it was kind of like putting the pieces together at first, and I'm thinking, okay, McGinn's got to be going somewhere. And there was a couple of other ramblings that we were talking about at WGR, off air and everything, and eventually the trade came out that McGinn was going to Anaheim, and I'm thinking, okay, it's either got to be a second or third round pick this year. I was very happy that it became a third rounder, but the conditions are a little odd, I do have to admit, and I will tell you this: I really do hope that it stays a third round pick this year, because if it does, it's this year's pick. This is something that I've always wanted ever since these trade talks started coming up. I want a pick that's for this year only. Like next year, I could care less about next year's draft, honestly, because I expect the team to contend for a playoff spot. And honestly, I'll pay attention to the draft picks, but this year, it's like I want this team to be good. And if the conditions are met, which I think the conditions are, Anaheim makes it to the Western Conference Finals and McGinn plays in at least half of the playoff games, that the pick becomes a second rounder next year. And I don't mind a second round pick next year, because then we'll have 3 next year. But this year's draft is somewhat deep from last year's, and I think that's what is the thing of focus here, is that you need to focus on this year's draft, because this year's draft is similar to last year's draft. I think there's more depth at the top of this year's draft, and then as you go down, it starts dropping off. And whereas last year, it's like, okay, you got your top 2, of course, McDavid and Eichel. And then after that, it goes probably 3 to like 20 where it's like good. And then after 20, it drops off a little bit more and a little bit more, where this year it's like you got your top 5 that are like slam dunks. Then you've got like 6 through probably like 20 that are, decent. And then 20 down is kind of just like whatever. But and my focus is that I wanted it to be this year's pick because I want to trade up back into the first round. Or you have a pick this year that you can try and utilize to get an asset that's already in the NHL. So honestly, I prefer that it stays this year. So I know a lot of people are saying like, well, root for Anaheim, quack, 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 and everything, saying, we want that second round pick. Honestly, I want the third round pick this year.
I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that Tim Murray was talking a lot about the draft picks being, as you said, assets or currency at this point. The Buffalo Sabres are getting to the point where they're drafting, 10, 11, 12 guys a season. You can only sign so many to a contract. And that's what Tim Murray pointed out as well today. He goes, the more picks we have, the better chance we have of hitting on a guy. But then again, at some point in time, you have to say, look, we need a top 4 defenseman. How can we do that? You package players and picks. We need a top 6 winger. Obviously, if the Sabres continue to be as bad as they are, they're going to pick in the top 5. They'll be able to get an Austin Matthews, Patrick Laine. I was trying to get the pronunciation in my head right. I don't want to make myself look like a jackass.
The two Finns.
I love the I got Puljujärvi. That's my favorite thing. I just yell Puljujärvi at people.
It's pronounced Yessi, not Jesse. It's Yessi Puljujärvi.
Why you gotta? Why do look at? I am mad because why do you gotta throw me for a loop? Because like I'm talking, I say Jesse Puljujärvi, and I got a great, and then you say it's Yessi. So I'll get it.
I go by how guys like Bob McKenzie, Darren Dreger, and Gordon Miller in the World Junior Championships say it, and Gordon Miller and Bob McKenzie always said Yessi Puljujärvi and Patrick Laine.
That's fair for me. Either way, you get a guy like Puljujärvi, Laine, Matthews, Tkachuk, any guy like that can really just most likely step in the lineup next season. Maybe not be a top 6 guy, but bring more scoring depth to your lineup. Because at this point, I mean, we see how the Chicagos of the world are doing it. We see how Washington is doing it right now. Although Washington's not won a cup, but you look at teams like Los Angeles, Chicago, and then obviously Washington in the East, and they have depth through all 4 lines, really. They have lines that can score, and they have talent on all those lines. And then you look at Buffalo, they have right now they have a line and a half. I mean, when Ryan O'Reilly's healthy, arguably 2 lines, but the bottom 6 is struggling bad. And this is, you can't make big. I've learned over time that the trade deadline is very exciting, but you don't see blockbuster deals. Like long-term blockbuster. Like you'll see a deal, a guy will get traded that's a free agent. Like, oh my God, I can't believe like Eric Stahl, for instance. That was we knew it was going to happen. But when it happened, we were still kind of like, holy crap, dude, Eric Stahl got traded. That's crazy. But you're not going to see a move like a lot of Sabres fans have been talking about Hampus Lindholm and Sammy Vatanen and Cam Fowler maybe going to the Sabres. You're not going to see a deal like that happen in February. You'll see a deal like that happen in June. So you have to take those assets you get in February and use them in June to get a guy like that to make your team better, because at some point in time, like we said, Brayton, the Sabres have to contend.
Well, yeah, I think you have to take time in order to make a trade develop like this, because you look at Ryan O'Reilly. It was rumored for like at least a year and a half that Ryan O'Reilly is going to get traded. He's on the trade market. What are the Colorado Avalanche going to do? And one team has always been in that conversation. It's always been Buffalo. Buffalo's always had interest in Ryan O'Reilly, and it took a good 6 months to put things together, see how things develop, and then finally at the draft, when everything was just at the right time, at the right moment, Murray and Sakic pulled off that blockbuster deal that was, sent Buffalo in a frenzy, because, you get O'Reilly, you get Jamie McGinn, and then you send them for Zadorov, Grigorenko, and JT Compher in a second-round pick. Like, that was a decent deal for Buffalo, because they get their top-line center. In addition, you draft another potential top-line center in Jack Eichel that night. But then you also give up a guy like Zadorov. Yeah, I know he's a future asset for the defense, but you also trade away Grigorenko, who really wasn't panning out here, and he's been doing okay in Colorado. And then you don't know about what's going to happen with JT Compher, and you don't know who they're going to draft at the second round. They ended up trading the pick to San Jose, but the fact is that it takes time for these big deals to happen. You can't just rush it unless you have talks like you've been talking from the beginning of the season all the way to the trade deadline. And if teams feel like, okay, this is the time to make this big deal, let's do it. And it happens, but like you don't want to rush a deal like this. You don't want to rush a hockey deal like Tim Murray wants to say. We could have made hockey deals all day today, or but it just wasn't the time to do it. So that's what the draft is for. The draft is for you look at your future, you see, okay, what can we address for the future, like a few years down the road, and then you think about, okay, let's look to the near future. Is there any way that we could take our picks and our assets and throw a deal together and make a deal that helps us now? And that's what Buffalo needs to really focus on, and I think the draft is the right place to do it.
Well, that's what Tim Murray lamented to today. He said earlier in the day, speaking to exclusive video to the BuffaloSabres.com, which how can it be exclusive to BuffaloSabres.com if they're really just doing their job? But that's a different argument for a different time. But a nice little laugh for us people in the industry. But it's something where Tim Murray lamented to it multiple times today in the video and after in the press conference that when we were all able to talk to him. He flat out said, I had a couple GMs call me today and say, let's make a hockey deal. And he said, okay, let's do it. And then he goes, when we talked about it, we came to the conclusion that it would benefit them greatly, wouldn't benefit Buffalo at all. And I said, no. He said, we'll talk about it later. And then he also did point out at the exit interview, he flat out said, hey, we talked to some teams and talked to some GMs, and we said, it's not going to happen now, but maybe we can revisit this in the summer. And these are the things that Darcy Regier never said to us, that never told us. So it's nice when Tim Murray will say, hey, we talked with some guys, there's some deals we're going to revisit in the summer. Will they work? I don't know. Will they not work? I don't know, but we're going to revisit it. And and we keep talking about it with the deadline with the draft being in Buffalo this year. Tim Murray's going to want to make a big splash. And if it's a top 6 winger, cool. If it's a top 4 defenseman, cool. But the one thing that we can talk about a little, if you want to hear, or we can tease it and we can talk about it on the radio show. Tim Murray did point out. He said this team has done fantastic under the circumstances that they've been under. No goaltender for half the season. He's like, obviously the guys who stepped up did a fantastic job. He goes, but the one thing that stuck out to me, he goes, our offense has not been good. But I'm not putting it on these guys. It's not their fault.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Excuse me.
And that, well, I was going to say, and that to me is like him going, look, we did the job. We got to the door. Now we have to get in. And that's my job. That's not your, I don't need Evander Kane to go out and score 40 goals. I need Evander Kane to score 20 goals, and then I need to find another guy to score 20 more goals and be, Evander Kane will score 20 goals in the first line. I need a guy to go on the second line and score 20 goals, or, be a dynamic player to make the second line better, because obviously if Evander Kane is scoring 40 goals, that's fantastic, but that's one line.
Right. And Tim Murray also was thinking about making deals, for instance, with not only Brandon Peary, but also Jonathan Drouin today. And Jonathan Drouin was one of those names where, of course, Steve Yzerman was like, God, I need to trade him before the trade deadline. And it's actually smart that they held on to him, because now there's a possibility, okay, well, maybe Drouin's now going to be tucked away in a corner and just saying, okay, I need to start playing again. I need to get back on the ice. And Yzerman can say, okay, well, if you want to get back on the ice, you've either A, got to go to Syracuse and bring your way back up here, or B, you're not going to be playing at all the rest of the season. And, and if he really wanted to make that deal, like I said before, he's got to, talk about it, talk more. And I mean, he's had, a month to talk about maybe a possible trade, almost 2 months. But, again, when this whole situation, it just didn't benefit Drouin. But with back to what Tim Murray was saying, yeah, I mean, it takes the time to find the right assets, find the right parts, and to put the perfect trade together in Tim Murray's eyes, of course. And if the other team agrees to it, then perfect. You got yourself a deal. But I'm totally okay with Tim Murray being, quiet really on this day. And, I do agree. He needs that piece, second, third line to fill out the rest of the roster and fill out maybe a defensive part too. But we'll see that in the trade at the NHL draft, which will be held here in Buffalo, by the way. But no, I think that this day was very uneventful, but uneventful for Buffalo, at least, for good reasons. I mean, you don't want to rush yourself into a deal thinking you're getting the best deal and then 3-4 months later, maybe something comes up at the draft, and it's just like, oh, well, I traded away him at the trade deadline. Well, then we're not going to trade you then.
You don't want to do essentially what Dallas did today with Chris Russell.
Oh man, that was probably one of the I get it. Dallas needs defensive help, but to give up what they gave up to get Chris Russell, I just don't know. But we'll talk about that more on the radio show. And I when that deal came down, I was just completely baffled at what the hell Dallas was thinking with this trade.
Now, quick question before we go break. We got to wrap this up. We got to go on the air in just a few minutes, but quick hit, just a quick hit, kind of like our recaps. We'll do a quick hit. In their one trade today, because we won't know until the future, because obviously when Timmer acquired Ryan O'Reilly, he flat out said, we talked about this at past deadlines and stuff like that. So maybe in June we'll get an idea. Hey, that when I said, in February I was talking to that guy, I was talking about, player X, and we got him. But with the McGinn trade, do you think the Sabres are winners or losers today? In a nutshell.
Well, I think they're winners. I think that draft picks are always a good thing, especially if this year, like I said earlier, it's a win-win for them either way. Next year you get a second-round pick, and then you'd have 3 second-round picks, which is awesome. Which
sorry to cut you off, but which we found out now because of the way the new draft lottery works. Teams are valuing their first-round picks significantly. I think today, this trade deadline, we saw 7 second-round picks move hands. Yep. So second-round pick currency, the value of a second-round pick may be going up because of that first round pick almost being untouchable. So that also could be very big for the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, and then this year, of course, if it's a third round pick, you got 4 third round picks. That's insane to think that Buffalo would have 4 third rounders, and I guarantee you Buffalo would take at least a couple of those third rounders, maybe 3 or all 4 of them, and trade them for future assets that will benefit the team either now or in the short term that isn't as long as waiting for a third rounder to develop. Nick Baptiste was a third rounder a couple of years ago, and now he's in the AHL. He's developing. He's looking okay. He's still growing to the AHL game. It took Zemgus Girgensons nearly 70 games to grow into the AHL, and then when it came to the playoffs, he was dynamic, and then the next year he comes up to Buffalo and he stands out. You're looking for something like that with Nick Baptiste, and I think he could do that, but it's just, I can't wait for the draft at this point. I'm already looking ahead to it. I know that there's 19 games left in the season, 19. But still, the fact is that there's so much to look forward to with Buffalo's future. And next year, I would not doubt in my mind at all if Buffalo would be able to contend for at least a wild card spot in the playoffs, because I think Tim Murray has his mindset on what he wants to do, and I think he's going to go hard after it.
Well, and that's the next step for the Buffalo Sabres is contending for a wild card spot. Because you don't want to go in and say they can win the cup or anything like that. But I just in a nutshell, Sabres are winners. Like Brayton said, you get the currency, you can trade it. But I think it's like an asterisk. You win, but you wait for what comes of it. I think I'm more interested to see what they do with it. But with that being said, we got to wrap this up. We got to go on the radio and be important radio people. So thanks for tuning in. For Brayton, at BJ Wilson WGR, I'm Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD. Thanks for tuning in to another BLTD Extracast. Check out BLTDsports.com, Facebook.com/BLTD podcast, at BLTD Sports on Twitter. Thanks again for tuning in, friends. We'll talk to you soon.